Thanks everyone for joining this this webinar. Good afternoon if you're in Europe. Good morning if you're in the US. My name is Frédéric Dross. I'm with STS, and let's go straight into that. STS, just a small, a brief slide of introduction. So we are an ISO 17020 accredited inspection body. We have performed more than 20 gigawatts of PV module production supervision. We're also active in the storage industry, where we have done more than a gigawatt hour of storage system quality assurance projects. We're doing about 100 quality system projects a year, and we are present in nine countries. We have the largest fleet of inspectors in the industry, and we were established in a bit more than 10 years ago. That was for the brief introduction. Now, if you look at our services, we're doing inspection. Obviously, we're doing testing, auditing. TIC, testing, inspection, certification is typically the kind of company we are. That includes auditing typically, and we're also doing advisory. So we help. An advisory mostly on the procurement support. We typically help our customers setting up quality management plan for all their procurement activities. And we do that both for solar and for storage. Okay, so let's talk about the topic of interest today. I would like to broaden it maybe to start with a little bit and talk about what is called sustainable sourcing. So sustainable sourcing is obviously, as the name indicates, sourcing according to the Sustainable Development Principles. And the sustainable development pillars are known as, so there are three pillars. One of them is the social pillar, the environmental pillar, and the economic pillar. And these three pillars can very well be adapted to how you source components, and that is what is called sustainable sourcing. So typically, from a sustainable sourcing point of view, you want to make sure that your supply chain is resilient, that has the right level of diversity. You want to make sure that the quality is there, that the price is there, that your partners are bankable. All that are in the economic part of the sustainable development framework. Now there are the two other pillars are environmental and social. Environmental, when we talk about environmentally responsible sourcing, we're talking about carbon footprint, we're talking about ISO 14000, some local regulations. Recyclability is a big element of that we've been talking about for quite a bit already in the PV industry. And then you have the social pillar. And then social pillar, we're talking about enabling communities, the labor laws, fair labor principles. So these are the social pillars. And what we see is that, at least when we discuss with our customers, we see that this is not so new to them. A lot of our customers are large developers, and they are aware of this framework, and they are going into they are deploying these principles. So what we see is that the recent discussion that, for instance, happened in the US in Congress, known as the Forced Labor Prevention Act. So these discussions, to our point of view, are not a trigger of this trend. However, they are an accelerator. And if I take a step back and I look at other industries, what I see is that these are principles that are actually already widely used in other industries. And I want to take the example of an industry which is relatively close to us, the microelectronics industry. And if you look at Apple, for instance, you see that they are very careful about their supply chain. They have a clear definition of their supply chain. They're doing assessments to their suppliers. Look at this number: more than 1,000 assessments of suppliers done every year. for Apple. It's so they are doing a lot of assessment on the supply chain. But then if you look at another company, Micron Technology, you see that they are mapping some of the issues that or concerns that stakeholders may have as higher areas of concerns and lower areas of concerns for the stakeholders, and then they are mapping that against the impact that this concern may have on the company. And you see that number 15 is actually responsible sourcing. So responsible sourcing is actually identified as one of the 4 most material sustainable issues. So you see that we're not the only ones taking this seriously. This is happening in many other industries. It's nothing very new. What is also interesting to look at is the history of it, and for that I actually took the example of Apple, and this is something that is available on their website. They are releasing every year an annual progress report on people and environment in their supply chain, and this shows the third audit participation of the smelters and the refiner in the supply chain of Apple along the years. So you see that they have started monitoring that about a decade ago, and that well, it took some time to ramp up. You see that it took about 5 years to have every single smelter and refiner in the supply chain of Apple to abide by this requirement of participating in third-party audits. So I think that's one of the messages that maybe our industry can take, is that yeah, we're getting there. Everybody's busy with that, but it is certainly going to take some time to get to 200% of either participating in third-party audits or more generally an acceptable or a robust due diligence on the supply chain. So the requirements that we are talking about, quality requirements have been here for a long time. Environmental requirements, we hear them from time to time. They are much less common than quality requirements, and there are some social requirements which are popping up. And I think these are driven, should not be mistaken, I think they are driven by the customers, but not only, and you will see that in the next slides, but okay, they are driven by the customers. What we see is that our customers typically, which are solar and storage component buyers, they really want to make sure that they source ethically, and they also want to make sure that they source the right quality, and they also want to make sure that they source in an environmental friendly way. And then they want to reduce their risk or mitigate their risk, their reputational risk. It's called the reputational risk. They also want to mitigate their financial risk, which is to say, okay, even if the manufacturers are typically the importers of records, at least in the USA, and despite contractual provisions, having the goods being stopped at custom would be a very big risk for them that they're not ready to take. The residual financial risk is very high for them. So that's why we have had in the recent weeks and months a tremendous demand for evaluating the supply chain of manufacturers. And as a matter of fact, we have today assessing about 26 gigawatts of annual capacity in Southeast Asia. So this is capacity that and Finlay will talk about that. How much of that is allocated to the US? The answer is spoiler alert. It's a big percentage. And we're doing that for actually more than 20 gigawatts of buying power in the USA. So a number, more than 20 developers have asked us to look at their supply chain and to assess their supply chain. So that's what we're doing right now. These new requirements are also, and maybe obviously driven by legislator. But I wanted to start with the customers because I think it would be wrong to say that it's only because of discussions on legislation that our customers are dealing with that. I think it's at least just as much a question of their own values and their own code of ethics that our customers want to abide by. But still, it makes sense to talk about the recent legislations which are under discussion, and it also makes sense to point out to the fact that there's a bill in the Senate, there's a bill in the House of Representatives, which is directly pointing to polysilicon. By the way, in the same breath as cotton and tomatoes, which are already under what is called a withhold release order. So they are already, so cotton and tomato from the Xinjiang province are already banned today from entrance in the US. And you see that polysilicon is listed in the same breath as these two items, listed as high priority sectors by our lawmakers in the US. Okay, so that's the stage in the US, but there is also quite some discussion in other parts of the world, and I took here the example of Europe. This is a briefing that was released in December. So already in December, the European Parliament was talking about how do we ensure proper due diligence on supply chains. So they are discussing a mandatory system for due diligence. This discussion is still ongoing. The first report was actually planned for May this year, for last month. It has been postponed because the European Parliament and the European Commission have decided to enlarge a little bit the stakeholders before releasing the first report. So they have enlarged a group of stakeholders in the discussion, and now the guidance is expected to be released in the fall of 2021. So we'll stay tuned on that, of course, but this is also under debate in Europe. Now, how do our customers deal with this risk? You can call them regulatory risk, or you can call them financial risk and reputational risk, maybe. But anyways, how do our customer deals with this risk? Well, typically, what we see is that procurement best practices recommend the following. They recommend first to do an assessment of the supply chain, then they recommend to do some level of qualification according to the requirements that you want to put in place, and then they recommend to perform the control, and that's the trust but verify that we hear very often. And I want to stress that this recommended practice is true for every type of requirement that we talked about. It's true for environmental practices, it's true for quality, and it's true for social practices. So if I look at, if I then zoom into each of these elements, for the assessment, that is the stage where people collect as much as possible of information. So typically, audit is the best tool for that. An audit is an evidence-based risk assessment, and that is what our customers are asking us to perform today. So quality assessment audits, we've done that for 10 years already. Supply chain assessment audit, it is a new requirement that we see in the market. Our customers ask us to go to the factories and verify and assess how the manufacturer deals with their supply chain. So what we recommend in this type of audits, and that's what we have typically in our scope, is to use globally accepted international standards. The ISO standards are very good for that. And we also recommend to use what is becoming an industry standard, which is the CEA Supply Chain Traceability Protocol. That's a protocol that that we have written in partnership with SEIA, and it gives the different principles of how to integrate transparency and supply chain traceability into manufacturers' management system. You will also find there some guidance on how to manage the risk, because that's what we're talking about. It's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about identifying the high risk, the highest risk, and then mitigating them. So it's really risk management we're talking about. And then guidance on due diligence, how to perform due diligence. And there could be self due diligence. You can audit your own supply chain, and there could be third-party due diligence. And there could also be, so third-party due diligence is when a manufacturer will hire a third-party auditor, hopefully with all the accreditation, to perform a diligence and deliver a report. And then there's second-party due diligence, and that is what we are doing, in fact, for our customers. So we are on behalf of our customers. We are auditing their supply chains. Our scope goes a little bit beyond. I want to stress it here. We go a little bit beyond the traceability protocol. We believe that there are some elements that are worth looking at, and I'm happy to talk about it either in the session or if you want to reach out to me directly afterwards. So that was for the assessment. Now let's have a look at the qualification. Well, the qualification, it's pretty simple. When you have all the information that you are collecting during the assessment, then you will apply your own set of requirements. And this whole set of requirements can be of very different natures. It could be, costs. I want a price of so much. It can be quality. I want this level of quality, and actually we've talked together about that at the PV Module Tech with PV Tech a couple of weeks and months ago. Can talk about bankability requirements, and Finlay is the champion for telling you which manufacturer scores better than others in terms of bankability. So you can typically say, if you use the PV Tech scale, you can say, okay, for bankability, I will only accept the manufacturer that score at least to this score level in the bankability score that you will see in a few minutes with Finlay. Well, it's exactly the same for environmental responsibility requirements, and it's exactly the same for social responsibility requirements. You can set here in this qualification stage, you can set the requirements that you want, but you first need, of course, to have the information. Okay, so that was for the qualification part. And then after that, once you have qualified maybe a number of manufacturers, that you've selected one for one particular project, then you have the trust but verify part of the due diligence. And that is something that you do during manufacturing, during execution of the project. So for us, what does it change? These new requirements, how do we integrate them? Well, it's actually, for us, it's not disruptive at all. We have already a framework, and it's listed here, that these are recommended practice for any type of quality assurance. And then we just plug in some add-on these new requirements. And typically one of them is that, well, you need to control the BOM. We happen to already control the BOM for about 80% of our customers. Ask us to have a 100% check on the bill of material of their modules. So, this is not very different. We spend a little bit more time on the components which contain silicon. But except for that, it's really not a big change. There are a couple of other things that we plug into this framework, but basically the framework that is set in the industry standard that we've set up in 2018, STS STD PA1, is very well adapted to managing these new requirements. Yeah, then the other recommendation that may be obvious, but we recommend to use accredited qualified inspection bodies. And then at the end, when you have manufactured up to the standard that you've set, then you receive a certificate of conformity, and that is a document that you can use with other stakeholders, whether they are shareholders of the company, or whether they are customers, or whether they are they are a number of stakeholders that will be interested in understanding how you have procured your modules, and that is what this certificate of conformity is about. And with that, I would like to finish my presentation and